Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Plenty to do here. We are working towards the weekend. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Braxton Rizzuto and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Luke Johnson will be here in 15 minutes talking Saints. I'm getting into some special teams talk with Luke coming up here in 15 minutes, but we'll talk black and gold as we do every single week. We know who LSU's SEC basketball opponents will be. We'll briefly discuss that. Pelicans didn't do anything. We can discuss that. Made one pick. Hometown kids. So we'll get into a little of that. Tennessee Vols are next up on our football preview series with all of LSU's opponents. Just have today and tomorrow. We'll do Tennessee today and Arkansas tomorrow, and that'll be the end of the line for those 12 opponents that we have previewed. You can also read about those over at louisianasports.net. So lots and lots to get to. Let's crank it up the way we do every day with our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
So I've gotten this question a lot. I got it yesterday. Every single Wednesday I go on the Shreveport sports radio show in the afternoon, Sports Talk with JJ and Bonsai, and they take some listener questions. And one of the listeners says, and I read the disapproval in the texter's voice. I didn't hear it, but I read it. Well, did you see the transfers LSU baseball got last year? Why should we think anything different of this year? Last year was the number one portal class. Who cares about this year? I heard the dismissive nature of the text, and my answer was, well, I have 3 years of sample size in front of that. It was really good with the transfers. I think that means something. I trust Jay Johnson. I think he's adjusted the way he's attacked the portal. I think the profile of the player that he's brought in is different. He detailed it. Jay Johnson did. He said, look, we chased homers. We recruited guys that had to sell out to get to the pull side to hit homers. They couldn't do that against SEC fastballs and breaking balls. They couldn't hit. We missed. Never going to happen again. That's what he said. He said it's never going to happen again. And then I look at the profiles, the guys that he's brought in this class, and I see guys that don't have to sell out to get to power. I see guys that drive the ball the other way. Bino Waters in the ACC drove the ball the other way consistently. Hit for a high average. Did not sell out to hit 23 home runs. Jason Wax did not sell out for power. He hit some home runs. He turned a Grant Fontenot fastball on the inner half out of the ballpark at the box, but he's hit a lot of balls the other way. Dawson Park did hit for some power and did not hit for a high average, but he does hit the ball the other way. And oh, by the way, he's a dynamic athlete that plays a premium defensive position, something the other guys didn't bring in. All that stuff is very, very positive when you look at the transfers that LSU is bringing in to this team. Also, don't take my word for it. Like, I'm here talking about it. Let's go to somebody who does this for a living. Somebody the ESPN pays to evaluate baseball players at the amateur level. Kylie McDaniel today came out with a piece, 2026 college baseball transfer portal rankings, and he ranked the top 60 players. The scale that he has is the FV scale. That's for future value. The top of this scale, for the purposes of this piece, is the 40-plus future value tier. These are guys that are projected to be first-round draft choices. He's got Ian Armstrong, who's transferring to Texas. He's not eligible until next year's draft. Nate Savoy, who's going from Clemson to Texas A&M. Jackson Hotchkiss, who's going from Washington to Arizona State. Those are the only guys he's got lumped in right now as first-rounders in the next couple of drafts. The next tier is the 40 future value tier. These are guys he projects from the second round through about the fourth round of the draft. Number 5 on this list total, second in this tier, but 5 total, is Bino Waters from Notre Dame to LSU. Kylie McDaniel basically projects him in this piece to be a second-round pick next year. Number 8 on this list of the best transfer players according to MLB scouting ability is Landon Hood, who's a 2028 eligible. He's the top 2028 eligible player in this list. Gonzaga right-handed pitcher. And then number 10 is Dawson Park. 10th. So 3 of the top 10. Waters at 5, Hood at 8, Park at 10. Not transfer portals, what kind of projection you're going to have at LSU. That's what Perfect Game, Baseball America, D1, those guys were doing, ranking LSU's class last year with Zach York and Trent Caraway and Braden Simpson and that crew coming in. They're talking about college projection. Kylie McDaniel's talking about the pros. He's talking about the draft. He's talking about big league potential. And he says that 3 of LSU's commitments are in the top 10. Incidentally, you go down to 58, toward the bottom of this list, Jason Wax does appear on this list. So this is a different tenor than last year. No one had Zach York as a top 2-round pick last year after he played a season at LSU. Same with Braden Simpson. Same with Seth Dardar. Trent Caraway has carried with him a reasonable draft projection based on his high school ability. He got hot at Oregon State. There's something there, but it didn't work out this year. And he's not going to be a highly signable player, a draftable player this year. And he'll probably play a 4th year of college baseball, to be honest. So this is different. These guys are different profiles than last year's transfer class. Don't take my word for it. I'll tell you. You can dismiss it if you want. But here's another. And I think it's fascinating. Sabino Waters comes in as one of the 4 best hitters in this transfer class. He comes in with a 2nd-round draft grade. That's Jake Brown-esque, right? Landon Hood comes in with a 2nd-round draft grade. That's what Anthony Ianson left LSU with. And Hood's got 2 years left. Dawson Park is thought of as a 3rd-round pick by this metric that Kylie McDaniel is using. Seth Dardar was never that. Braden Simpson was never that. Like, my line that I continued to use in the middle of this past baseball season and towards the end was like, it's difficult without a lot of film and data, just looking at the stat sheet, looking at a couple of YouTube or Twitter highlights, to discern a huge difference between Daniel Dickinson and Braden Simpson. Daniel Dickinson went to Utah Valley, and he hit home runs, and he stole bases, and he hit for high average. And Braden Simpson went to High Point, and he hit home runs, and he hit for high average, and he played on the infield. And one of them was a stalwart on a national championship team, and the other guy lost his job 3 minutes into the season. It's hard to tell the difference. But one of the things you can look at is that Daniel Dickinson was a potential Team USA lookout. Daniel Dickinson was thought of as a very draftable prospect, and Braden Simpson didn't carry that level of athleticism with him. I'm not telling you that I know for a fact that Bino Waters is going to hit the 21 home runs that Jake Brown would have hit if he stayed healthy, that he's going to be a 2nd-round pick, and that he's going to translate seamlessly into the SEC. I'm not telling you that is a fact. I'm telling you he's got a better chance to do that than Zach York. I'm not telling you that Dawson Park is Daniel Dickinson and is not Braden Simpson. I'm telling you that people don't think he is today based on draftable metrics, athleticism, bat speed. He's got a lot to learn. He's going to have to take more pitches. He's going to have to make better contact. He's going to have to cut his strikeouts down a little bit. But he already is athletic with great bat speed and premier tools. And you look at Wax, and I like his bat. I like the fact that when I turn him on, he's driving the ball all over the ballpark. He's hitting the ball down and hard. He's hitting the ball in the left center field gap to the opposite way. He doesn't have to cheat to get to his power. Now, I saw Zach York do a lot of that in the fall, and I have held my hand up about that for 2 months now and told y'all, like, I told you Zach York was going to hit a ton. I saw it in the fall. I really believed it, and I was wrong. And it won't be the last time that I'm wrong. I promise you that. But all I can do is give you my opinion. And then I can back that up with the opinion of people that do this at a higher level than I do. And Kylie McDaniel certainly does that. And he believes that the class that LSU has brought in is full of legitimate professional prospects. And what have you heard Jay Johnson say for 4 years in Baton Rouge? You cannot win at the College World Series without MLB baseball players. Now, we'll see what this Oklahoma team has. If Jackson Willits makes it, if Cord Rager develops into that, if the Mercurius brothers are big leaguers. I think there's a good chance they are. But you can't win it without dudes at the top. Coastal Carolina can get there. Why? Because they have Flukie right there at the top of the rotation. Cam Flukie is going to be a first-round pick, and he's going to pitch in the big leagues. Morrison, Sun Belt Pitcher of the Year, early round draft choice, is going to pitch in the big leagues. Just because they don't have 8 of them, just because they don't have Skeens and Cruz going first and second in the draft, they've got them. And you've got to have those guys. And Kylie McDaniel says that this transfer class for LSU includes them. And you can surround those guys with guys that aren't necessarily slam dunk pro prospects. You can have a Cade Beloso in there. You can have a Luis Hernandez in there. You can have a Michael Braswell in there. But if you're going to have Michael Braswell and Luis Hernandez in there, you need Kate Anderson and Anthony Ianson. And these guys are not slam dunk first round picks, but they've got that kind of pedigree that they could work themselves into it with a big year against the SEC. Look at what Daniel Jackson did last year, going from Wofford to Georgia, wins the Triple Crown, wins the Golden Spikes. He will be a first round pick. So this is just encouraging. I realize that everybody is going to go into January of next year guarded about LSU baseball's expectations, preseason hype, all that kind of stuff. And that is completely and utterly fair. You should have that level of skepticism after the shocking stuff we watched from March through May this year. Shocking. I was shocked. But I'm going to take all of this data and input it into my preseason prognostications, and this is different than last year. You cannot argue that. Doesn't mean the results on the field won't be different or will be different, but this part is different. The guys they brought in are a higher class of prospect. And prospects are just that until they've realized their potential. But this LSU class of transfer portal players looks better on paper than what LSU brought in last year. That's a big, big deal. They're not done yet. Had some visitors Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I anticipate more good news to come. Hasn't come yet. I told you yesterday it wasn't coming yesterday. I told you Friday and Saturday was when I thought you may hear some bells ringing. Still kind of feel that way, but we'll see how things shake out over the next 48 hours over there at the box. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We will step aside. We will come back. Luke Johnson talking Saints next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC, FabryChevrolet.com, FabryChevrolet.com. The website is an awesome place to just kind of look around. There are so many great ways that you can filter through the inventory. There are tabs at the top for all the new vehicles that you can look at. GMC, Chevrolet, they're all there. You can look at all their used vehicles as well. You can look at a tab on that website of the vehicles that are priced under $20,000, if that's what you're looking at. Specials, there's a tab for that as well. They've got specials on new vehicles. They've got specials on used vehicles. Chevy has some special offers. You can also look at your rewards on the website as well. If you're looking to trade in your vehicle, you can look at that trade and use the financing tool to see what your monthly payment would be based on the trade your vehicle gets. There's so many useful tools on the Fabry Chevrolet GMC website at FabryChevrolet.com. And it just starts there because you can go check them out at Highway 61 in St. Francisville as well and get that awesome customer service the Fabry family has brought to Baton Rouge for more than 3 decades. Fabry Chevrolet GMC is the dealership. FabryChevrolet.com is the website.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We'll talk about LSU's basketball schedule coming up here in 15 minutes. We know the SEC teams that LSU will play twice. We know the ones they'll play at home. We know the ones they'll play on the road. So we'll get into that in 15 minutes. Let's talk some Saints now. Luke Johnson covers the black and gold for NOLA.com and The Advocate. He's with us on Thursdays. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Look, I want to talk special teams here. I want to talk kicking. I want to talk punting. I want to talk returning. But before we get into that, like, is this team ready to prioritize special teams in terms of wins and losses and making a push here? Like, I would argue if they're going to win a lot of games, they're probably going to have to win a lot of them close, and that may make a huge difference. But you may suggest they're not quite ready to push to win just yet, and that's down the list of priorities.
No, I don't think it's on the list of priorities.
Okay.
I don't think you need to be a contending team to want like your special teams to be on point. You know, especially with this team, we're like, the division is there for the taking. You know, this is a team that hasn't been in the postseason in 5 years. They want to make it back. They want to win the division, and they're probably going to have to win a few games on the margins. I think that's why you go out and get somebody like Barry and Brown. And it's why after like 5 years of mediocre punting, after letting Thomas Morstead go, you go out and get a free agent punter. So I think special teams is going to have to be an area where they take a big step forward, because I don't think they've been very good for a couple of years now. And when you think about like those really great teams of the 18, 19, and 20, they were fantastic on special teams. I think they have to get back to that.
The reason I kind of framed it that way initially was because you could consider Charlie Smith still kind of a project. And are you willing to go into a season with something of a project? He missed 2 kicks from inside 50 last year. He missed 2 kicks from beyond 50 last year, and he was late to the party there because Blake Grupe got a long leash of missing a lot of kicks. But, like, how do you feel about his spot as the kicker?
I mean, I think it's tenuous. I think he did pretty well, I think, in his little audition last year. And he's clearly got just loads of talent, right? I mean, you've seen it in some of the games, but like I'm telling you, man, like these like training camp practices, I swear this guy could hit a field goal from 70 yards. But like the big distance on your kicks doesn't matter nearly as much if you're super inconsistent. And I think he was more consistent than I was really anticipating last year once he got into the games, because it's been so hit or miss in practices. But they can't go into this thinking like he is safe, right? That's why they went out and got Tanner Brown, who is coming off an outstanding season in the UFL. And it's why they signed Mason Shipley out of Texas after the draft, and they brought Younghoe Koo in for a visit. Like they're going to take a look around, and if Charlie Smith is going to win this job, like he's going to have to win it. They're not just going to be like, we love your potential, because I think they've just been unsteady here for a while at kicker.
And Ryan Wright, they bring in as a punter, Tulane product, 6'3", 245. That's a full-grown young man in his 5th season in the NFL. I mean, we feel like that's the guy that they're going to go to here.
100%. Yeah, they've just, like I said, after letting Thomas Morstead go, I think Blake Gillikin did an okay job. But then they go through the Lou Headley experiment, and then last year with once again blanking on that. He was so forgettable.
Exactly, it's that time of year.
The kid from South Carolina. This is just like they've just been like wandering in the wasteland for a while at punter, and it's really hurt them. They've had punts get returned for touchdowns because they're kicked in the wrong place of the field. They've been like bottom of the NFL in net punting average. Like they needed to go out and address it. Like they needed to commit a serious resource to it. So I don't know if Ryan Wright's going to be, a Pro Bowl, All-Pro punter for the Saints, but he's at least a capable, competent veteran back there, which is like more than you could say for what they've had for a long time here.
Of course, Kai Kroger, the name you're looking for there from South Carolina.
Like my brain kept wanting to say Kai Forbath.
One Kai is as good as another in this case.
Yeah, like I knew it wasn't Kai Forbath, and like the problem was it's just when he got into the game last year, it was just you just didn't even think it was ever going to be anything good. There wasn't even like any sort of wow moments where you're like, oh, okay, like I can see it. It was just bad all year, and he just like held on to his spot, which I never understood. But they just had like this like blind spot at punter for years now.
Do you have a name outside of Barryon Brown back there at punt returner that you think makes some sense, or is he kind of the leader at that spot?
I mean, I think he's a leader, both punt and kick returner. And I don't necessarily want to say like his his roster spot is like locked in. They've got like Ty Chandler who's done it in the pros. They've got other people on the roster who can handle it. Especially if they feel like they're in a roster crunch at wide receiver, because like as it stands right now, I think there's 5 guys who are going to be on the team no matter what. So you're talking about keeping a 6th receiver, really just using that spot on a return specialist. But like, I think he's really explosive. I mean, like obviously your listeners know what he can do as a kick returner. And I think that skill translates to the NFL. We've seen it over and over and over again. Guys who are good returners in college are often good returners in the NFL. Even really undersized guys like Barryon Brown is. So I feel pretty good about his spot. But I do think that there's going to be competition there, because it's going to come down to, can we keep 6 wide receivers?
I have not gone deep into the numbers on this, and I don't think we've gotten to the part of the calendar where we read some things about that, but where are we on the importance of the kickoff returner in the NFL based on the new rules? Have you looked into that at all?
I mean, I think it's growing, right? Like last year, they changed the touchback, and we really saw that new rule play a big part in the NFL. I think it made Rashid Shaheed a more like a viable trade commodity for the Saints at the deadline. And you saw what he did when he got to Seattle. He didn't really impact the game as a receiver that much there, but he had some huge moments as a return man that kind of propelled them to the Super Bowl. So yeah, I think it's like, I think the data backs it up without like actually looking at it in front of me. Teams were actually giving returners more chances last year because they didn't want them starting at the 35-yard line. And that led to more big plays in the return game. And, the Saints had like 1 or 2 big kick returns. I think there was one Mason Tipton one where, he almost took it back to the house. But generally, I think they were kind of behind the curve on returns last year. And it's why you go out and you invest in a player like Barryon Brown, who, in past years is probably not a draftable player. Right. That's like an area they tried to kind of augment their team in the priority free agent after the draft sort of thing with, the Rashid Shaheeds and Deontay Hardys, the world. I think that's changed. There's a definite value to having somebody like that on your team now that kick returns are really actually legitimately part of the game again. So, good deal for Barryon Brown, because otherwise I don't think teams are going to be drafting a 5'9", 180-pound wide receiver.
And if you consider that, if you give an NFL team the ball at the 35-yard line and they get 2 first downs, they can kick a field goal. So like you can't really do that.
Right. Yeah, and if Charlie Smith gets the consistency issues figured out, you might not even need 2.
Yeah.
You get 1 and 8 yards, he might be in range. So I think that was a really big change. I typically didn't really care much about like the whole field position thing, like what's like 2-3 yards. When you're talking about like adding like this is 15 yards further down the field than it was 10 years ago. 15 yards is a big deal, especially with the modern kickers. We've seen like year over year, like they're getting better at longer distances, and it's only a matter of time before you see people hit like 70, 71-yard field goals.
As we've now kind of put a bow on this entire conversation, like how do you feel about the Saints where they are entering training camp from a special teams perspective, considering that they do have to work some things out with the competitions?
Yeah, I mean, much better than last year, just because they at least have one proven specialist. And I think I like what Barryon Brown presents like as potential in the return game. He's obviously like a step down from Rashid Shaheed, what they had last year, but I think he could be special in that role. The kicker is just the one thing I'm a little concerned about. I'm rooting for Charlie Smith to like be successful in the NFL, because one, he's like an A+ dude, and two, he's like really, really, really talented. I just want to see what that looks like when it's consistent. But I think that's still, until I like see week to week proof, that's still going to be a little bit of a question mark for me.
Luke, we appreciate the time, man. We'll talk soon.
Yep, my pleasure.
He is Luke Johnson with NOLA.com and The Advocate with us on Thursdays talking black and gold. I want to remind you about Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com is the website. That's SwingEasyGCBR.com. But don't go to the website. Go to the place. It's right there on Segan at Perkins. It's hot out. It rains a lot of afternoons. Maybe you don't have 5 hours to play an outdoor round this weekend. What if I told you could play 18 holes in 50 minutes? A couple weeks ago when we were there, I got there a little bit early when we were doing our giveaway, and I was playing Cypress Point. I played the back nine in like 20 minutes. It's really not time consuming at all. Now, you bring 3 people in there, you're pushing to an hour and a half or so. That's a lot better than 5 hours if you're out there for a normal Saturday round. So if you don't have the time to pack in a round of golf outside, but you'd like to get some golf swings in and play, you can do it at Swing Easy Golf Club. The simulator's a really, really cool way to approach things. Plus, it's inside and it's air conditioned, which is very, very nice. So go by and see him on Segan at Perkins at Swing Easy Golf Club. They're online at swingeasygcbr.com. As far as my thoughts on the Saints special teams, like Smith is intriguing. You found him in this program with Europe, and he's got that rocket of a leg, and he's a gregarious interview, as Luke was talking about. And I like a lot of that, but I worry about the misses. And he did miss 4 times last year, and he wasn't even the kicker for half the season. Now, that was child's play compared to Blake Grupe, who was missing every week. But you got to make field goals. And for this Saints team, I don't think it's the difference between winning the Super Bowl or not, but it could be the difference in like 2 or 3 games, and that's it in the South, y'all. 2 games is the division in the South. I would be really surprised if somebody ran off and won this division by 3 games. If there was a 13-4 in this division and second place was 10-7. That would really surprise me. I think the winner is going to be somewhere around 10 wins, and I think second place will be around 9 wins. So if you're talking about 1 or 2 games, that's such a big deal. And this Saints team, to me, doesn't feel like a team that's just going to be burying teams by 2 touchdowns. Like the Breeze Saints in primetime in the Dome that were just wiping people out by 30, getting backup quarterbacks in the game. Like, if this Saints team is going to win 9 or 10 games, 6, 7, 8 of those are going to be in play in the last 5 minutes of the game. Well, you got to make your field goals. And because he didn't grow up playing in the NFL, and because it's just like, there's something about it that just makes me a little bit nervous, as opposed to a guy who just grew up in this system and has been doing it. And you'd love it if you had a 36-year-old kicker that you really trusted, had a 29-year-old kicker that you really trusted. This is a wild card to a degree, and you may have to see what you got out there. There are generally kickers that are floating around in free agency. You mentioned Koo that they brought in for a visit. The Smith thing worries me a little bit. I think they've shored up punter. I'm confident they can find a returner on the roster. I'm concerned about field goal kicking to an extent. Hopefully Charlie Smith can do it, because you found an incredible asset there if he can. But it was a little bit rocky at the end of the season last year. So we'll see what the Saints decide to do when training camp rolls around. We appreciate Luke giving us a little time here on this Thursday. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Step aside. LSU basketball knows who they're playing. I've got thoughts on it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Lifetime Roofing, LifetimeRoofingLA.com, LifetimeRoofingLA.com. It is the end of June. That means storm season's really about to hit its fever pitch, and it's been quiet around here for the last few years. That's awesome. I hope it continues. But we know the risks that exist this time of year in this part of the world. So if you need your roof inspected right now to make sure it's in the best shape it can be, Lifetime Roofing is happy to do that. They'll go up there, they'll do the inspection. If you need a tune-up to fortify that roof, they'll do it. If you need a repair, they'll do it. If you need a new roof, they can handle that too, and financing options are available. If you get that new roof, how about it? Lifetime workmanship warranty. That includes the materials that are backed by CertainTeed, one of the oldest and most trusted names in building materials. They've been offering that since January 1st, and they are proud to do it. If you're looking for a local roofer in Louisiana, Lifetime Roofing needs to be the phone call you make. Check them out online at lifetimeroofingla.com, lifetimeroofingla.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Shout out Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. They're online at highlandig.com. That's highlandig.com. Looking for group employee benefits, the Highland Insurance Group can help you out with that. They know it's a tough time right now. It's been a tough time for multiple years, if we're being honest. The market's really, really tough. If you've had really bad renewals on the benefits side for your business and you're really, really hurting from a bottom line perspective to offer the health care that you would like to your employees, call the Highland Insurance Group. They're not a silver bullet. I've told you that all the time. They can't promise you a 20% reduction. What they can do is take a look at your current situation and potentially offer a second option. That's what they do. Looking for healthcare, dental, vision, making sure that you've got your employees taken care of so that you can hire new employees, that you can keep the talent inside your organization that's important. Contact the Highland Insurance Group. Let them help you with your insurance. The Highland Insurance Group, they're online at highlandig.com, highlandig.com. All right, SEC basketball opponents have been made clear over the last 2 days. They do not have a schedule that's been made available to us. We just know who the opponents are. For those of you that are not fully aware of how the scheduling system works with opponents, every team in the SEC, all 16, have two permanents that they will always play home and away. LSU's are Arkansas and Texas A&M. So LSU, of course, will play Arkansas and Texas A&M home and away this coming basketball season. Everybody gets a third team every year, just one. And for LSU this year, that is Auburn. Now, as of 12 months ago, as of 11 months ago, as of 10 months ago, that was a really scary proposition because Bruce Pearl had Auburn at the top of the SEC and among one of the best basketball programs in the country. Bruce Pearl left Auburn and gifted his son the role. His son is completely unqualified for the role, and Auburn suffered for that this past year and did not make the NCAA tournament. Auburn should have terminated Stephen Pearl and went to hire a real basketball coach. They did not. So they're going to take the good coach's kid and try to run that back with Tahad Pettiford and company. We'll see what Auburn is. It's still a tough place to play, still a great arena, and still got a really good guard that they'll lean on. And, maybe they're better this coming year. But I would very, very much bet against Auburn reaching the heights they have reached in the recent past with Bruce Pearl under Stephen Pearl. I think that much probably speaks for itself. So that's what you know about LSU is that's 6 games right there. Home and away against Arkansas, home and away against A&M, home and away against Auburn. Speaking of Arkansas, they, of course, lose 2 big-time freshmen that were drafted in the last 2 days. They also lose Trevin Brazile, but they did bring in a very star-studded transfer and high school class, as John Calipari is going to do just about every year. A&M has brought in a very talented transfer class as well. Bucky McMillan has kind of put himself out there. They're spending some cash. So A&M looks like they're going to be pretty decent again next year as well. Now, let's look at who LSU brings to the Assembly Center this year. And keep in mind, I'm not going to pretend like I know how good all these teams are going to be. In the transfer portal era, you can just put a lot of these programs in a hat. There could be a year South Carolina's good, could be a year they're terrible. Could be a year Ole Miss is good, could be a year they're terrible. Florida, I'm going to generally bet on. Nate Oates, I'm going to generally bet on. Mark Pope's going to have talent at Kentucky. But we don't really know, and I'm not going to pretend that I know. I'm going to watch, but I'm not going to pretend that I know. But I'll tell you that Florida's coming to the PMAC. That'll be the headliner. Florida brings back 80% of their scoring from a team that won the SEC last year. That's really, really impressive to bring that type of crew back. They've got an elite front court that decided to come back and play another year in college. So you've got a really talented Florida team. It's going to be a top 5 team in the country preseason by everybody. They come to the PMAC. Ole Miss comes to the PMAC. South Carolina comes to the PMAC. Those 2 teams did not make the NCAA tournament last year. South Carolina was the worst team in the league, and it was a bad go for Ole Miss in the transfer portal last year. They were not very good. So those 2 teams come to the PMAC. Tennessee is going to have to replace a lot. Nate Ament was their best player. He was taken in the first round I guess today's Thursday, so on Tuesday night. But they come here. Texas will come here. So will Vanderbilt. So that's your home schedule. Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Vanderbilt. I kind of like the road schedule based on program history. You've got Alabama, which is going to be tough. They're always talented, and they always play their style under Nate Oates, and LSU rarely wins at Coleman for whatever reason. But Georgia was okay last year. I think Mike White's an okay coach. I don't mind going to Stegman to play. I think that's an okay draw. Kentucky is going to be talented. They brought in a couple of big-time transfers at the end of the transfer cycle, and that's always tough to go play at Rough. But here are the last three. Mississippi State, they weren't great last year, missed the tournament. Missouri was okay last year. They've had 2 good seasons and 1 really bad one under Kevin Gates. And Oklahoma, who was right on the verge of firing Porter Moser last year and lost a first-round pick in the NBA draft. So when you look at the road games that LSU has to play, I don't mind going to Mississippi State. I don't mind going to Missouri. I don't mind going to Oklahoma. I don't mind going to Georgia. I think those are pretty manageable. Plus, who knows what Auburn's going to be. So that's another one that you play on the road. I'm not here to make sweeping judgments and proclaim it a huge win or a huge loss. I think it's a reasonably neutral draw. It's not like you're catching Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee twice. Those are the best, most consistent programs in the SEC. You play all of them only once. I think that Arkansas A&M and Auburn are fine teams that you catch twice, and I think there are some away games that you've got a real chance to win in. I don't know what LSU's team's going to be, quite frankly. So it's hard for me to discern right now like what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, where they could be susceptible to teams, where they could be where they could take advantage of teams. Like, it's just not like it was 6, 7, 8 years ago when I was doing Hoops with Hunt. You had a feel for the 4 starters that were coming back at Kentucky, or you had a feel for the 4 starters that were coming back at Auburn, or you had a feel for John Calipari's 3 5-stars that he brought in and what they were. Like, I don't have that anymore with the portal. I don't know what the kid School X brought in from North Texas is going to be like in the SEC. Like, I'm not going to try in June to proclaim that. I can go off of track record, coaching, and, recent history, and I think this is a fairly neutral schedule for LSU to draw. If you've got season tickets, here's who's coming to the PMAC. Arkansas, Calipari, A&M, Auburn, Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Vanderbilt. You look up on Selection Sunday, who'd you play away from home? Well, LSU will have road games against Alabama, Kentucky, Gonzaga, and Houston. That's pretty salty as far as resume goes. So I don't have big sweeping judgments on it. Again, I think that it's fairly neutral, but I'm excited about LSU basketball in June for the first time in a long time. And I think that's a very, very good thing for those listening. Talking about Hoops with Hunt, we're workshopping at the moment. I think there's a better than 50% chance that does come back in November through March. We'll see. Again, we're working through some things on this side with how to best implement that, but I think there's a good chance that we'll see Hoops with Hunt this year. And I'm excited to talk hoops starting in November and hope that LSU can make a push to the NCAA tournament this year in year 1 under Will Wade. I've got a piece up at Louisiana Sports right now, louisianasports.net right now, that goes into what the 5-for-5 ruling means for LSU. And if you'd like to read more about that, you can over at louisianasports.net. Let's take a time out, come back and close out hour number 1 next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust, FABT.com, FABT.com. Started up in 1910. It's been 116 years, and they've grown to 25 locations, and they care about the community here in Southeast Louisiana. That's why all their branches are in Southeast Louisiana. That's why every decision that they make on commercial loans, on personal loans, is made in Southeast Louisiana. That's why when you make a phone call to First American Bank and Trust, it's answered in Southeast Louisiana. That's just the way they do things. Don't think that means they're small. 25 locations means they've got the assets to help you out with your commercial loan. Looking for the house of your dreams? Work with First American Bank and Trust. Doesn't matter if you're just outside Baton Rouge, if you're down the bayou, if you're up by 12 all the way to Metairie. There's a First American Bank and Trust near you in Southeast Louisiana. Stop in one today or check them out online at FABT.com. First American Bank and Trust.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
I love my conversations with Sean Sagrera over at Sagrera Farms. They just keep getting better at what they're doing, and it's exciting because they're right here just outside of Baton Rouge, and what they're doing is just amazing, and it can change the way that you buy and eat beef. They've got a process that starts with mating genetically superior cattle, and it creates an amazingly consistent result. And what he can promise you is that you're going to buy prime Angus beef if you go to Sagrera Farms. I was listening to the Supper Club chef who said that the meat they got last week from Sagrera Farms was the best they had ever gotten. And it's all based on the IMF scale, the intramuscular fat scale. And you're looking at select beef, which is bottom of the barrel at 1 to 3. You're looking at choice beef from 3 to 6, 7. And then at 8, you're talking about prime Angus beef, 8, 9, and north of that. And right now on the farm, based on ultrasound that they've done through the veterinarians, you're talking about 14s, 16s, 19s, 20s. More than double prime at Sagrera Farms. If you'd like to get a quarter of a cow, a half a cow, a whole cow, stack your freezer, go in with some buddies if you don't have the freezer space and spread it out. You get ribeyes and fillets and flank steaks and picanhas. You get briskets and chuck roast, ground beef. It's prime. It's changed the way we eat in the Palmer house. We won't eat burgers that aren't Sagrera Farms Premium Angus beef. So contact Sean Sagrera. I'll give you his phone number here. And just change the way that you eat beef, the way that you shop for beef. Go to Sagrera Farms just north of town and get that prime Angus beef. Sean's number is 225-719-1723. That's 225-719-1723. All right, the Pelicans were rumored to do a lot over the last 2 days. They did not. They stood pat in the second round, made their pick, and went on down the road. And I'll say this. One, it appears the 2 draft picks they made, Queen and Fears from last year, are pretty good picks. That appears to be true. So you get a little bit of goodwill in that. And the story of this year's pick is cool because he went to St. Aug. So those 2 things matter to an extent. I will say my opinion on the process here is that it's flawed. Because I think standing pat in the second round, taking a 23-year-old who was a nice player for SMU, it just doesn't move the needle for a team that desperately needs the needle moved. And by doing this, all you're suggesting is, well, we can't really move the needle right now. We will move it, but it's going to take a couple of years. We've got these young 2 guys. They're growing into a role. We can't move Zion. We didn't feel we got enough for Trey, so we'll let him play a couple more years in his prime where we don't win. I wanted them to make a significant move, to go significantly younger. And you would have done that by trading one of these players in their mid to late 20s for draft picks and assets in the future. And instead, you kept those players in their mid to late 20s. You took a player that starts his career at 24, that's in the second round, that's kind of unlikely to help. And it just makes me look at it and go, yeah, that didn't do anything for me. Like, I don't mean to bash Jerron Pierre. Like, he played at Southern Miss for a couple years, and then Wichita State, and then Jacksonville State, and then at SMU. He took a red shirt in the middle of that. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was in college for 6 years. And at SMU this past year, like LSU played him down in New Orleans in the Smoothie King Center. I was there. But this year, you know, he had a nice year. He averaged 17 points. He dished out 2 assists. He shot it decent at 37% from 3. The year before that at Jacksonville State, 38% from 3. Like, a good player. He's a nice player. But he's about to be 24 years old. And he's a second-round pick. Second-round picks just don't help all that often. So it just felt like the Pelicans kind of did nothing. And when you look at the fact that they were relatively healthy this past year, and they were so bad and so far out of contention that just kind of running it back, saying, oh, well, we'll just get a little bit better. To me, it feels unlikely to work. And 2, what I know is it's not exciting. It's just not exciting. And so I don't mean to like rain on Jerron Pierre's parade when the hometown team takes you. And this really has nothing to do with him. It just has everything to do with the fact that I just don't think they did anything to move the needle when they have an asset or potentially 2 that could help move the needle. And there are trades being thrown all over the league where teams are making drastic moves, and the Pelicans just kind of sat back in the corner and went, we're good. Yeah, we may win 30 this year. It's like, really? And look, it doesn't mean that the offseason's over. Just because the draft's over, you can still move Trey Murphy. But I just thought there would be a little bit more oomph to this week, and it was just a whimper for the Pelicans. And that's a bit of a bummer because I'd really like them to ascend from the absolute bottom. And this just feels like a team that's destined to sit at the bottom for a little bit. And that's no fun. Look, we don't talk a lot of Pelicans on here, but this was relevant time of year to do so, especially considering that there's not a lot going on locally outside of them at this current juncture. And just kind of felt like a whimper for the Pelicans in the draft process. So Jerron Pierre from St. Aug, through four different colleges, now headed to the Pels to potentially help in the backcourt. Maybe help out the team over in Birmingham. We'll see. That's it for hour number 1 here on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We talked about LSU's transfer portal ads in baseball and what Kylie McDaniel thinks of them at the top of the show. And I kind of explained why that's an important distinction from last year. It just did not feel like that last year. You trusted Jay Johnson. You were riding the high of a second championship in 3 years, and you just assumed the next crop